The Placing You First podcast begins in less than 20 seconds.
Visit crcgroup.com to subscribe, download our award-winning tools and intel articles that help you stay aware of emerging issues and trends, or get a snapshot of the insurance marketplace with our industry-leading Ready indexes. You'll find it all on crcgroup.com under Tools and Intel.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Placing You First, the podcast where we dive into the trends, challenges, and opportunities shaping the insurance marketplace. I'm Scott Gordon.
And I'm Amanda Knight. And today we're talking about a topic that doesn't always get the spotlight it deserves. But when a loss happens, it can be devastating. Today we are talking about transportation pollution liability.
That's right. Many motor carriers and brokers assume endorsements like CA 9948 or MCS 90 cover them fully, but the truth is these often leave big gaps. A true transportation pollution liability policy, what we'll call TPL for short, is designed to fill those gaps and protect against real-world exposures.
And we're thrilled to have the most perfect guest to unpack this with us. Joining us is Mike Padula, president of Starwind Environmental. Mike has over 25 years of experience in environmental consulting, claims, and underwriting, and he's seen firsthand how these exposures can play out and how the right coverage makes all the difference.
This is the Placing You First podcast from CRC Group.
This podcast features news and insights from a vast knowledge base of more than 5,500 associates who write more than $30 billion in premium annually.
Plus, we give you the latest information on what's happening at CRC.
This is the Placing You First podcast.
And now the hosts of the podcast, Amanda Knight and Scott Gordon.
Mike, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you both. Real pleasure to be here. I've been a longtime fan of Placing You First podcast, even before I joined the CRC group. So kind of a real treat to be on this side of the microphone for once.
Right. I mean, we haven't had the pleasure of having you on the podcast before. So before we jump into the fun of pollution liability coverage, tell our listeners a little about Starwind Environmental, Mike.
Yeah, sure. I joined the Starwind team back in October 2024. So it's approaching a year. I can't believe that. It's been a fast and furious year.
Right.
But I was brought on to build out the environmental liability vertical here within the Starwind platform. What really excited me about the opportunity were really three key elements. One was the distribution model. Starwind's approach to market access and broker relationships is just really strategic and forward thinking, which aligned with what I was trying to accomplish. Two was great support for innovative product development, not only internally, but from our reinsurance providers. And three, the technology push. We're making significant investment in the organization to remain cutting edge. On the distribution side, what we're trying to do here is one, open market. We're distributing product directly to our E&S brokers, mostly wholesale brokers. And this allows us to engage directly with brokers that have unique environmental risk where we can bring our expertise to the table and provide the solutions. But the second thing that's really exciting is this concept of bolt-on insurance, where we're partnering and collaborating with other Starwind platforms to embed environmental insurance within the existing product. This scales down the time and effort needed by brokers to place environmental coverage by embedding that coverage directly within an existing policy. On the product side, when I came here, my focus was to develop an easy to use product that even insured can pick up. I've been in the industry a long time, and I've read policies from other folks that they get very complicated, and even the most seasoned professional has a really hard time, kind of getting through it and understanding. So. Within that product, we've developed this modular approach where it gives insureds the ability to pick various coverage parts, pick different limits, pick different deductibles. So it's very customizable.
So you mentioned that this can be really complex, right? It's a environmental coverage can be tough for a variety of people to understand, from the insured to the broker or the agent themselves. So let's start with the basics. For listeners who might not be as familiar, what is the difference between the endorsements that Scott mentioned earlier, the CA 9948 or the MCS 90, and then a true TPL policy?
Sure. Yeah. Let me start by saying, MCS 90 and CA 9948 are really integral parts of an auto liability framework, and they're not to be replaced by a TPL. The TPL is really there to enhance and fill in some of the gaps left by those mechanisms. The MCS 90 was developed in the 1980s to ensure that motor carriers transporting hazardous waste across interstate lines um, had the financial means to cover bodily injury, property damage, and environmental restoration from their operations. The key thing is that it's not true risk transfer, right? So if there is an incident, an insurer pays those damages. They can seek the reimbursement back from the insured. So you're not you're not really transferring the risk. You still have the same liability at the end of the day. So
Right.
that's kind of the big thing with MCS 90. C9948 was an endorsement created by ISO to kind of fill in some of the gaps in the standard auto liability policy. And the difference from MCS 90 is it does provide true risk transfer um, uh, a mechanism, right? So it does cover uh, cargo when it's being actively transported, and that's where we need to kind of focus. Is there's all these other things around transportation, such as loading, unloading, staging, other ancillary exposures that are not necessarily covered by CE 9948. And a lot of insureds think they have this mechanism that covers all their exposures, and they're left with gaps. And that's where the transportation pollution liability policy comes in, is that it's filling the gaps left by CA 9948 and MCS 90. It's by far the most comprehensive pollution risk transfer mechanism. In addition, PPL is highly customizable, whereas like C948, it is what it is. It covers X, and that's it. With TPL, there's a lot of variability, as we were talking about before. You can buy different limits, different deductibles, different coverage parts to cover all of your exposures. So, in summary, again, MCS 90, C948, really important, but the TPL really covers your broad pollution exposure associated with your operations, and a policy that really should be explored by brokers for their transportation risks.
So, really, when we're talking about brokers and insureds who rely only on these endorsements, they're kind of missing the full picture. So, I know we touched on this, but why do you think it's so important to go beyond regulatory compliance and think about, say, broader environmental risk transfer?
Yeah, thanks, Scott. Great question. I mean, look, we live in a world where there's heightened environmental scrutiny every day, right? I mean, you turn on the news, whether you're local media, national media, you scroll through your phone, you're going to find something related to an environmental incident. I mean, just a couple of years ago, there was a major incident in the Midwest, got national coverage. That's the extreme, but they also happen every day on our local roadways, where there's an upset and overturned fuel oil dealer, uh, so some other commodity that's causing a road closure that needs cleanup. They're happening, and the public is much more aware of issues surrounding the environmental incidents. So even when we think about environmental liability, everybody assumes, oh, it's only for the ultra hazardous industries. Everybody has some form of environmental exposure, and it's important that you address it and go beyond just the regulatory mechanisms. You talked a lot about social inflation and nuclear verdicts on this podcast with other specialists before. They apply to pollution too, right? Juries are not sympathetic to companies that harm the environment, right? The environment is near and dear to all of us, and we need to protect it. So environmental claims can be large. They can be awards and verdicts can be unpredictable. So you need to have the proper policy in place to help defend against that litigation, protect your insured's balance sheets, and really allow you to continue to operate your business while you let the experts handle the environmental matters. And then lastly, with MCS 90 and C 948, you may not have the expertise to respond. They may not have the expertise to respond to an environmental claim. With Starwind Environmental, you have access to a 24/7 emergency response hotline. So if you have an incident, July 3rd, before you're ready to take off for the weekend, you have an upset and overturn. You have some support there to help you navigate that crisis. And in the whole claims process, we have an embedded claims team with us here at Starwind, handled by our partners at NCS, National Claims Service. Some great environmental expertise within that shop that helps us and our clients manage environmental claims. So you get that special expertise with the transportation pollution liability, or any of the pollution liability policies that we offer.
You mentioned that every business on some level, or at least most, have some level of environmental exposure. It's just maybe not top of mind based on what they do, what they sell, what they make. Do you have any, I'm curious, do you have any recent or memorable claim scenarios that could maybe drive that point home, or maybe help emphasize or illustrate how these different coverages would apply?
Or yeah, I mean, I could spend probably the next 4 hours talking about environmental claims, and that's typically what most people like to talk about.
Right?
They could care less about the coverage, but claims is where the rubber hits the road. Thinking back through my career, I mean, one that kind of sticks out, kind of somewhat comical. I had a new underwriter that I joined my team. If she's listening to the podcast, she's probably laughing already. But I thought it was going to be a great risk for one of her first to handle, and it was a petroleum hauler in Alaska, which is one of the most difficult geographic regions to write. But I
Right.
thought this was a great idea. It had some premium attached to it. And within a month of writing the policy, we had a tanker truck going up the north slope that lost control and spilled several thousand gallons in frozen tundra. They had MCS 90, but they didn't have CA 948, and we
Yikes.
were the mechanism. So, I mean, it was an important policy for them, and we responded.
Mm-hmm.
What made this one unique is that we were 3 hours north of Anchorage with no real lodging. So the response team handling the cleanup had to mobilize and demobilize every day and drive 3 hours north to the spill site from Anchorage, and then
Wow.
3 hours back. And the claim ended up costing us around $3 million to clean up. That's kind of the extreme side of things, but we had
Wow.
another one where it related to loading and unloading, which again is not always covered under CA 9948. And this is typically what happens. It's like an oversight of some operator. He hooked up his hose to the tank that he was filling, decided he was going to go talk to his buddy and grab a cup of coffee, and left the side of the truck where they were doing the loading and loading, which you should never do in the first place. You always need to, always have line of sight when you're doing any type of
Right.
that activity. But they walked away, and, of course, when he walks away, the hose wasn't necessarily connected correctly and released. And several hundred gallons of product were released into a nearby creek. We had some environmental disaster because we ended up impacting a endangered species within that creek. So
Oh no.
not only did we have to worry about the cleanup, but we also had to restore the environment and pay some environmental damages and fines, which again, not always covered under a auto liability policy. So I could keep going, but I think you get the point that these environmental incidences from transportation could come fast and furious, and from really any aspect of the whole transportation scope.
That is crazy. The stuff spilling onto the frozen tundra. You know what they call that, Mike? Those in the industry, they call that the Lambeau Field.
Yes,
when
indeed.
that happens.
Yes, indeed.
They call it the Lombardi special. But that's nuts. So in cases like that, many brokers, they may not realize these hidden gaps until it's too late. What are some of the most common coverage gaps, Mike, that you see catching people off guard these days?
Yeah, well, I think it really goes back to when you're focusing on MCS 90 and C948, they only really apply to registered motor vehicles. Right? If an insured uses other modes of transportation to transport product, let's say a rail car, watercraft, even aircraft, those are not covered. Those modes of transportation are not covered under an auto liability policy, and you may not have the right mechanism in place to cover it. So, our transportation pollution liability goes beyond just auto liability. It covers any scheduled mode of transportation, and we can get creative and really dig into the risk and try to understand it. And in fact, we have one now quoted for some rail car transport. So, the transportation comes in all shapes, sizes, and modes. The other one is that under CA 948, it's typically only applies to covered autos. So a lot of industries will use third parties to transport their product on their behalf. And just because you put your product on somebody else's vehicle doesn't mean your liability ends, right? So if the third party carrier doesn't necessarily have the right insurance, or the contract is insufficient, the regulators are going to come back to you because it's your product, and that again may not be covered under some of these other mechanisms. So if you're using third party transportation, it's always good to have that extra layer of protection above and beyond any contractual indemnities that you may be provided from the third party, or relying on their insurance to have your own. And then lastly, this happens more often than not. It's still unbelievable. I mean, again, environmental insurance not always thought of as the first liability insurance. I mean,
Right.
it's not a CGL policy where everybody's buying CGL. It's becoming more popular. But what we find is a lot of third parties require a contractor's pollution liability policy to enter their job site, right? Regardless if you're doing anything like swinging a hammer or building something, they want that line of coverage for you to take a step on their property.
Sure.
And what we find is the guy pulls up to the job site to deliver the cargo. They don't have the coverage. They're not allowed on the site. And this leads to the classic 3 o'clock Friday afternoon frantic call from a broker. Mike, my client can't complete the job. They won't let him on the site. What can you do? And Amanda, this is the part of the job I love, right? Is like,
Get to be the
the
hero.
scramble to be the hero, right?
Yeah.
And help make the broker be the hero.
Sure.
But like finding that solution on a Friday afternoon or a Saturday morning, whatever it takes, and getting that coverage. So,
Sure.
Pollution liability, it's not only just that little sliver of transportation, it's other things that may be contractually required that often gets overlooked.
So, Mike, for retail agents and brokers listening right now, what's the very first step that they should take to evaluate, whether their clients need a true TPL policy?
Yeah, I think if we can summarize the conversation that we've had so far, one is, you really got to take a deep dive and look at all their exposures. I mean, the obvious ones kind of stick out, right? I'm carrying cargo X from point A to point B, right? But I mean, we've talked about, do you have any contractual obligations that require specific insurance lines of coverage, right? Making sure you're going through their contracts to understand, they do need contractors' pollution liability for this one contract. Do they have? Are they relying on other third parties to transport their materials? Reviewing their contracts, making sure that the insurance requirements are up to date, that they're sufficient, that there's good indemnity provisions, but also supplementing that with potential pollution liability insurance. Looking at all their the different aspects of their operation. Where do they lack the coverage that they need from a pollution standpoint? Is it their facility? Is it their contracting operations? Is it something else that maybe we need to fill? So, and then really explaining the gaps created by CA 948. A lot of insureds think, this is it. This is the end all be all. But letting them know, like, hey, look, these are the limitations of CA 948. It's an important mechanism in your risk transfer tool, but it's not the end all be all. Are you prepared not to purchase this other line of coverage that can give you the full protection? Do you have the financial means and wherewithal to manage those claims?
Right.
And really for first, it's protecting the broker agent's E&O, right? That they recommend this coverage, and if something happens, at least they have a paper trail like, hey, we recommended this to you. But really making them the insured understand, hey, this is a financial liability that you may have. You don't have the resources internally to manage this. This is a mechanism that can help. And in the scope of an auto liability policy, most of the time, a transportation pollution liability policy from a premium standpoint is a fraction of the auto liability policy. So not a big financial burden,
Right.
and something that, I think brokers and agents should communicate to their clients about, and letting them know that this is an available coverage for their business.
Well, and we kind of try to emphasize, we know that retail agents don't necessarily always specialize in just one line of business or one coverage. And so in my mind, this is where Starwind Environmental fits in, right? Start that conversation early. You've been doing this for more than 25 years. You've got a great team. In my mind, it all kind of starts with having that conversation with you. And I know you primarily focus on wholesale brokers, right? And I know you've worked a lot with CRC specialties brokers, which we love. So I think just encouraging folks to pick up the phone or send an email and just start with, here's what I have, Mike. What am I missing, or what do I need to know? Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. It's one of the things that it seems so basic is picking up the phone.
Right.
The phone rings and not letting it go to voicemail. And I kind of, if the phone rings, I don't, even if I don't know the number, I pick it up because you never know who's on the other line.
Right.
And all too often I hear, "Oh my God, you picked up your phone. You're one of the few people that actually pick up your phone." Like, I
I
guess it's
love
a lost
that.
art.
Yeah,
I don't
it is.
understand how you don't pick up a phone, but I love talking to people. I love talking to people about environmental insurance, as I'm sure you could see from this
Yeah.
podcast. But look, yeah, I think myself and my partner in crime, Todd Brooks, who's my associate here, we've been doing this. In fact, a little known secret, Todd and I were college roommates for 4 years at the
That's
University of
amazing.
Delaware. And so we've known each other for a very long time. So we have this great working relationship. We're on the phone multiple times a day, talking about risk, talking about our next conquer, next product that we're going to conquer. But really, trying to find solutions for our brokers, and the industry's come a long way over the last 30, 40 years. I mean, kind of established in the 80s, environmental insurance, refined in the 90s, and now we're kind of to the point in the 2000s and late mid 2000s, I guess, where the product has really become a staple in risk transfer liability. Not only have the underwriting side evolved, but the brokerage side has evolved. Right? There's specialists within on the retail side that focus on environmental. There's specialists on the wholesale side, and you hit the nail on the head. A lot of business right now from CRC, one of the best environmental wholesale shops right here within the CRC group, led by some great folks, really smart folks that understand risk. So if there's agents out there listening and you don't understand environmental insurance, great resources within the CRC brokerage team that can help you navigate it, and hopefully they navigate to
That's
us
right.
where we can
Yeah, for
we can.
sure.
But there's a lot of options out there and a lot of great environmental companies. But we're we with the experience that we have, by an experience of almost 50 years in the business, we really try to take a focus on finding solutions, whether it's through the open market channels or even this bolt-on concept where, eventually you might be able to access our TPL product through an existing product like Insure Risk. We're working with Alex Bonds' group to see how we can coordinate and collaborate with them to offer TPL through their transportation. So a lot of exciting stuff, a lot of expertise. We're really excited and look forward to helping out the brokerage community with these unique exposure.
Well, I know CRC Specialty is glad to have you all as a go-to resource. This has been fantastic. So to sum it up for our listeners, endorsements like CA 9948 and MCS 90 might meet minimum compliance, and they are definitely valuable tools, but they're not the whole thing, right? There's more to it than that. And a true TPL policy offers broader protection, cleanup, defense, even fines and penalties in some cases. And brokers should take action now to help protect our retail agents' clients. So this was I learned a lot about environmental coverage.
Awesome. I love talking about it. I'm glad it, and I hope it's useful to the listeners out there as well.
Yeah, this I am always interested with this. I talk with Amanda on this thing every once in a while about how there are certain insurance coverages that are very specific to certain industries, certain things. But this is one of those things I think that touches everyone at some point. So this is always interesting to learn about. Mike Padula, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
He works with his college roommate, and between doing keg stands, they will answer your phone calls.
Absolutely.
So let's get into something a little lighter. Before we let you go, we want to try something that Amanda and I like to call rapid fire. And it's just whatever comes to the front of your mind, the first thing on the tip of your tongue.
Okay.
And the first question is, and I love this question.
I knew you would love this one.
I know, and it's so much better than for the rest of your life. But if you could only listen to one band or artist on a cross-country road trip, who would it be? Just one artist.
Come on, no, I couldn't do it. I need at least a couple, so I'm going to take.
Okay,
Really?
give you two.
Okay. Well, I have to. My niece is a up and coming artist, and this is not a promotion. It's just I do love her music, but she's an up and coming artist in Nashville. Jess Nolan, a little singer songwriter, type style. So it's great. But I lived in Texas for 10 years. I'm originally from New Jersey, so you can imagine. Grew up listening to Springsteen and Bon Jovi. Country music was never high on my list until I got to Texas. So I would say I need to have a little bit of a country mix with a little bit of Robert Earl Keen, a little Jerry Jeff Walker, and a little Lyle Lovett. And I think that between those artists, I think I could get at least two from Jersey, at least halfway into Pennsylvania. So.
There you go. Okay, next up. What is the strangest or most interesting cargo you've ever heard of being transported?
Look, if whatever you buy, online, anywhere has been transported in the truck. A grocery store, whatever you put in your car, it's all. So the next time you're riding down the road and you see and you're next to an 18-wheeler, you can only imagine what cargo they're hauling. Let me turn it this way. What was the most interesting pollution event I ever had?
There you go. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Even better.
Milk. Nobody thinks milk would be
no, not at all
pollutant. But we had and this is actually quite common. I've been working with Jake Blackshear's group, and we've written a couple of these milk haulers, which is great. But years ago, we had a risk up in this Pacific Northwest, and upset and overturned milk went into a nearby stream. And again, one of these where there was some endangered salamander or something. And we ended up having to pay like $500 a salamander, or whatever the aquatic life was. I'm using salamanders. And some ecologists is that listening and saying like, there's no salamanders out in the Pacific Northwest. Who knows? But it was some wildlife and the reason was that, milk has a different pH than natural environment, and we changed the pH level in the creek and the stream, and so anyway, that was the most I think interesting and unique pollution exposure.
I would have never thought of that.
Yeah.
The good news is the ones that survived had really strong bones.
That's right.
All right, last one. If you were not in insurance, what career do you think you'd be in today?
Yeah. Well, I love building, right? I love designing something. That's why I'm here, right? I had an opportunity to design a product from ground up. First day was a blank computer screen and a white page on my desk where I had to create. So it gives me a lot of joy to create something and see the end product. So I think if I wasn't doing this, I'd be a general contractor. I love on the weekend swinging a hammer, cutting some wood, building something, and I envy general contractors for some reason. And I think that's like the greatest job ever. Who knows? Maybe they think environmental insurance is the greatest job ever. But
at least you get air conditioning. They don't.
That's right.
Well, this was great, Mike. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for lending us your expertise to the podcast. It's great talking with you.
Yeah, you too, Scott. Thank you, Amanda. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here today.
Of course. And thanks to all of our listeners for tuning in to Placing You First. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you subscribe and check out Tools and Intel for more insights from CRC Group. We'll see you next time.
Are you ready to move faster and go further? Take your career to the next level. Join Team CRC to gain access to best-in-class tools, data, exclusive programs, and more. Send your resume to resumes@crcgroup.com and read testimonials from recent hires on LinkedIn.
Search for CRC Group.